Welcome back to Morning Trade Live. We want to focus on Tesla, a name that so many folks hold in their portfolios. Which way could this go? Obviously, it was beaten down. It was 50% off of its 52-week highs. What's the direction now as people are extremely worried for many reasons? Tony Zhang is with us, chief strategist at Options Play. I will say I've seen the gamut. I mean, you think it's still heading lower. I did see Mizuho 375. We had CFRA, they had 360. But on the downside, 190, I think, from UBS today. What do you think?
Yeah, I think in the immediate short run, we can very quickly get back down to that 220 support level, which is where it's been trading at for the last couple of months. But if we break below 220, our downside target here is 180. So there's still significant downside from where we currently sit. And this is all on the back of the fact that the valuations still look incredibly rich, on Tesla, whether you look at it on a multiple of earnings or multiple of revenue. Especially in an environment where deliveries have disappointed, production has fell quite a substantial amount here for Q1. And, we're heading into a market environment that just is quite challenging for the EV market, especially as, the Chinese competitors have continued to eat market share away from Tesla across almost all of the major markets that Tesla competes in, especially Europe, Asia, and now even here in the US and Australia.
There was some talk about Tesla maybe being in a better position than some of the competition because of the production that it does here in the U.S. Could that be a bright spot or not really?
That certainly was one of the bright spots. We saw Tesla outperform all of the other car manufacturers on the back of, the auto tariffs. However, I think right now we're in an environment where the macro environment is a much more challenging environment. We've seen consumer spending, consumer just confidence deteriorate to a substantial amount here. That's going to have a pretty big dent on consumer durable purchases, which obviously cars fall into that particular category. And, at the moment, it's really just the fact that the Chinese EV makers are really gaining market share across all of the major markets that Tesla competes in. That is, I think, the biggest challenge here. We saw deliveries disappoint here for Q1, falling 13% year over year. That's a big miss here from a deliveries perspective. And that's the biggest problem I see. And, the fact that it's trades at 105 times forward earnings is really just quite ridiculous from a valuation perspective, right? There's really no other names in the S&P 500 trading at those types of valuations with these types of market cap that Tesla has. You have Palantir that trades at those levels, but it's a much smaller company, much faster growing company versus, Tesla from a revenue perspective is moving backwards. And that's really the biggest challenge that I see here in the market. And alongside with the broader markets, you had a 22% gain yesterday on Tesla alone. That's a historic move on the particular stock. Yet despite that 22% move, we couldn't get past prior highs. We couldn't get past 280, 290 where it was trading at just the last couple of weeks. And I think that's a pretty big sign. And just overall, the S&P 500 failing at that 5,500 level here today, that really kind of confirms the more bearish tone here that we have here for the broader markets. And Tesla, unfortunately just has to go with the wind on that front. So that's why I also have a more bearish view here on Tesla alongside with my bearish market view as well.
Yeah, your bear case, you said the price target could be 180. I'm interested in your trade here. We do know BYD has had some better numbers and deliveries and so much competition. You make a good point. Elon Musk has alienated a lot of buyers, so there's that concern. There's a brief boycott. There's so much that goes on. On the plus side, it's an energy source, robo-taxis. There's so much more that full self-driving. I mean, I'd like to be 10 years ahead and look back at us today. In the meantime, let's take a look at the trade that you would set up here.
Yeah, I think right now this is a very short-term play at the moment. I think that if we break below that 220 level, there's further downside. But just at the moment, we're shooting towards getting back to prior support. So I'm going out to the May 2nd weekly expiration, which goes out just a little under a month from where we are today. I'm looking at buying the 265, 220 put vertical earlier today. You can pay about $13 for that debit spread. Obviously, markets have moved a little bit lower here since the open. So you might want to adjust that about $10 lower in terms of strike prices down to the 255, 210s. You can pay about $15 right now for that spread. And that'll give you about a 2-to-1 risk to reward ratio if Tesla ends up around 220 or lower at that May 2nd expiration. And like I said, that's the temporary support that we see here for the stock. That's what we're shooting for in the short run. And if we break below 220, that's really where I think that the run can get down to the 180. And if it does break below 220, that's when we would want to take profits on this particular trade and start rolling the strikes down to that 220, 180 strike price, type debit structure to be able to capture that last move down to the 180 final target that we have for Tesla.
Yeah, understood. I mean, how do you handle the week this week? A lot of volatility. Some of the traders tell me how they love it, but we've had some huge swings. How are you finding trading and enjoying this week?
It's for traders that are trading, I would say, on a very short term. So for example, if you're trading either single day expiration options or 0 days expiration options, it's been an incredibly fun day. Yesterday was really a historic move. We were actually just trading live with some clients yesterday talking about, what if this was to rip to the upside, and within 15 minutes we saw that historic move to the upside. That was really an amazing time to be in the markets. And just today, when we stopped at that 5,500 level at the end of yesterday, and now we're getting rejected at that level, now we're kind of just heading straight back here to the downside. So we're kind of doing a complete 180 when you look at the actual market internals, and that's really what drives our bearish view here today for Tesla.
Yeah, understood. I mean, you had a lot of short covering yesterday, and maybe some excitement too for people who bought and got to sell at a higher price, and then those who just sell into the strength. Tony Zhang, great to see you. Thank you for all your views here and how to handle some of this volatility. Options play, Tony Zhang, thanks.